welcome to the A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. Today is show day. By the time that you're listening to this, the show will have already happened, but today, in my time, in past David time, is May 30th, where I am playing a show with my band Midwest Skies, and the bands Beach Glass and Smile Darling, formerly known as the Melissa Dillon Band, now Smile Darling. Midwest Skies is opening up the show. The way that it worked out that way is because, or I guess the reason that it worked out that way, is because I wanted to make sure I could put every single ounce of energy into my primary band's show. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't exhausted or tired or deflated or out of breath or out of a voice to play the Midwest Skies set. Because I'm also drumming for Smile Darling as well. So I'm not in the band, but I believe that their drummer is in Brazil or something like that, somewhere in South America. Main thing is he's not going to be here to play the show. And they asked me to drum. And so I've spent the last month and a half prepping with them for this event. And I'm having a ton of fun. It is a cool experience drumming for another band, learning their entire set. I am nervous in a way that I have not been nervous for a show in a very long time. I'm usually like about to vomit nervous going into Midwest Skies shows just as they are, which I think is a good thing. I think it's good that I get nervous for those shows because I feel like when I walk into a show and I'm like, I got this. I don't got this. So it's important for me to kind of humble myself by saying that like anything and everything could go wrong today. I am backlining with my own drum kit, which means that all of the bands are using my drum set, which just means one other person is using my drum set, and he's very good at drums. He'll be very careful with my drums, but it makes me nervous, and it makes me like insecure thinking about somebody drumming on my set and being like, this is not as good as my kit, or like, these aren't tuned the way that I would have them tuned, or whatever. So I'm a little insecure, a little nervous about that, but it'll go Midwest Skies, then Beach Glass, then Smile Darling. And then the show will probably wrap, let's see, if it's a 45-minute set for each band, the show starts at 9. That'll be 9:45 that we start, 10 p.m. that Beach Glass starts, 11 p.m. that Smile Darling starts, which means I'll be done around midnight-ish. That is assuming that everything goes to plan. Everybody plays their proper set times. Nobody goes over. So I'll be out by midnight, 12:30-ish, probably home by 1 in the morning. And then I need to be an hour away in Muskegon tomorrow morning to shoot a wedding, which I'm only shooting the getting ready and the ceremony stuff. But that means, let's see, it's an hour away, which means I'll need to leave by 7. Which means I need to get up at least by like 5:30, which means I'm going to get about 3 to 4 hours of sleep that I am realizing in this moment is all I'm going to get. And then the next day, I'm going to Lansing to shoot my nephew's first birthday photos. I'm already kind of underslept. Something's going on, and we'll actually talk about this lately, whether I'm at my own home or I'm like I am here at Emma Sheridan's house, dog sitting while she's out of town. I don't remember the last time I just woke up, like peacefully, gracefully, subtly, slowly. I've been getting woken up by the dogs every single day for the last, like, at a minimum, 5 months. At a minimum. And I'm just throwing that number at the wall, that date at the wall. They have to go out. I can't say the side word. If I put those words together, then they'll start to freak out. But they're like waking up. I think it's just because they're getting older and like their bladders are getting less retentive. And yeah, whatever. I'm already exhausted is what I'm saying. And then I have to not only play 2 sets, but I'm also featuring on Beach Glass's set. I'm jumping up there on the microphone for the song Feeling This by Blink-182. I might also be joining them for the song The Reason by Hoobastank. I'm not entirely sure. And don't get me wrong, anytime I do this, anytime I complain about this kind of stuff, I get so angry at myself because like this is the point, right? Like this is what I wanted. I wanted to be busy creatively, um, musically, and with video work, and like this is just what it is. But I beg for it. I don't know if it's a careful what you wish for thing, um, because I want more of this. I just want all of this and to be able to sleep properly and not be nervous and anxious and worried and scared and chilled to the bone with imposter syndrome every single time I do something like this. I shot a wedding last week, which was a good reminder that like I'm decent at what I do cinematically, and I want to give myself at least some props for that. But I just anytime it makes me so nervous to shoot those weddings, to shoot anything for someone else where they've paid a significant amount of money to have something permanently as a reminder of a moment in time, whether it's photos or video or whatever, or if I'm recording music for them or something. I just like, I don't know what kind of expectations people put on me, but I put much higher expectations on myself. And so I need to meet those expectations. In a previous episode, I've talked about like, all I want to do is just like exceed people's expectations, but I also want to exceed my own expectations. And if I just barely hit the mark, I don't know. Does it feel like I've done anything? I don't know. Speaking of exceeding expectations, I have been doing a Let's Play on the podcast channel. I don't put it out on Spotify or the streaming services or whatever, because although many of these platforms now allow for video, I don't want this podcast channel, this podcast network to be all about these Let's Plays. It's just a fun way for me to get back into somewhat kind of sort of playing video games, but just one video game in particular. I'm playing the game Don't Starve, which I think I've talked about in the past is a like creepy but cartoony Tim Burton-esque survival series where you get stranded on a desert island, or a deserted island, I guess, and then you try to survive as long as you can. And I'm having so much fun with that. And the audience is tuning in. Most of the episodes that I've already put out have already far and above exceeded any of the view numbers that the podcast has gotten. I think it's just because it brings in a new audience. It's a gaming series, and there are, millions and millions and millions of gamers out there. There's a handful of people who know me who are interested in seeing what I'm up to every week. So hopefully this creates some sort of crossover appeal. If you do subscribe to the YouTube channel and you are exhausted already by seeing these videos, you don't have to watch them. Just to be clear, nobody has said that to me. This is just sort of those criticisms I place on myself to be like, you're supposed to be one thing, and if somebody thinks that they're there for one thing and they get another, they're going to hate you and then they're going to leave and whatever. It is another piece of the puzzle that is me. I'm not playing video games all the time. I'm playing for maybe an hour to 2 hours a week. And I'm just recording that and putting it out on the channel. So if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel and are interested in gaming content, I think it's youtube.com/A.D.H.Deep-Dive podcast. Let's go ahead and look that up because I actually don't know. What is the podcast channel? I think it is, let's see, visit channel, youtube.com/@ADH-Deep-Dive. Every Thursday, those episodes are coming out. The episodes so far, episode 1 got 111 views, episode 2 got 86, episode 3 got 74, episode 4 got 92. I just put episode 5 out in my time yesterday. They've just been coming out on Thursdays. It's a really fun way to get back into playing games and like enjoying them. Yes, I'm making content out of them, but like I enjoy making content. And in a world full of AI slop, it's nice to do something by myself, Something that I made. that yes, even though the creators of the game made, I am making content out of their content. Okay. So I'm dancing around it. This next thing I don't really know how to talk about. Because it is the single most stressful thing in my life right now. And I've floated it on the past couple of episodes, but like, I don't know what it means. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think. But I need to figure out how to do all of those things, and soon, because it's coming up fast. So I was here at Emma's cuddling with the dogs. Or maybe I was, I don't remember where I was. Cuz I didn't black out, but I think I may have repressed this memory. I might have been here, or I was on the floor at my house snuggling with Judah, who for a long time has had a big fatty tumor under her right arm, right front leg. And longtime listeners of this podcast know that they discovered cancerous cells in that tumor over a year ago now. Probably a little bit longer. It was a long time ago that this happened. Well, whatever. Maybe it wasn't a long time. Maybe it was 2 years ago. It was a while ago, but what is time, right? It felt like an eternity ago, but also yesterday at the same time, that they discovered cancerous cells in there. And so they were like, we should probably get this thing out. And it was a very expensive endeavor just to get her through all the testing, the preemptive testing, the preemptive biopsies, and all that stuff, just to make sure that it even is cancer, and what type of cancer and how quickly it's progressing, and then do other tests. And, you know, I had to kind of put my ego aside, and I did a little GoFundMe thing for the remaining balance, which was like $2,000 or something like that. And that would have included the surgery and some of the preemptive testing. The main thing was the expenses came to about $2,000, no matter what way you no matter what way you looked at it. Actually, I think the way that I set it up was I was trying to recoup some of the losses already, and then I was going to pay out of pocket on my own to pay for the cancer treatment, because I had already lost a bunch of money spending it on her tests and stuff. Anyways, all that to say, as she's about to go under the knife for the surgery, they call me and they say, hey, we can't do the surgery right now. Judah has a heart murmur, and if she's under for too long with the anesthesia, her heart could stop and she could possibly not wake up. Also, I don't know if I've said this out loud. I'm sure I've got some new listeners because of the Let's Play. Judah is my dog. My 12-year-old Dachshund Corgi, otherwise known as a Dorgy mix dog. So anyways, I drop her off at the surgeon. I get ready to take my other dog, Gus, out for, a day of just hanging out and spending time together and loving on my boy while my little girl's in surgery. And like I said, it could not have been more than a half hour that had gone by that I discovered that she's got a heart murmur. And so they're like, we can't do this until we get the heart murmur under control. So I'm like, great. There goes that. So then it's a matter of getting the heart murmur under control. So I have to take her into a heart specialist, which already costs an arm and a leg just to get her in, who then says, after all this time, she doesn't have a heart murmur. I don't know what they're talking about. Okay. All right, great. So let's get her back into the surgeon. And the surgeon says, because it was so recent that we discovered the heart murmur, whether or not this heart specialist says it's a heart murmur or not, we discovered a heart murmur, and so we have an X amount of waiting time to be able to get that out. So we can't do the surgery right now. And then there goes all the money that I had to do the surgery. So for what it's worth, obviously, as a recap, I am eternally grateful for the people who were able to help out financially for all of that testing and the research and the trips to the vet and the trips to the specialist. That was more than kind, and I am extremely grateful. Well, all this time later, a few weeks ago, I'm snuggling Judah, and under her left arm, I feel another tumor. This one's more near her lungs, or I guess near her rib cage. I don't know where it's at on the rib cage, but near her lungs. And this one is much harder. Usually fatty tumors, and Gus has got a bunch of fatty tumors. He's an old boy, and I'm used to seeing fatty tumors in dogs and feeling fatty tumors in dogs. And Judah's one under her arm on the other side is definitely a fatty tumor that has cancerous cells in it. But now it's sort of a 1-2 punch in that there's definitely cancer in the one. It's not going to just not move around. And now I feel another tumor that's like rock hard. And her other one is starting to get much more firm. It's not just the like squishy, fatty stuff. So that then kind of confirms like the cancer is spreading. Who knows how rapidly? Who knows how lethally? I don't know. But for the last while, Judah has had stanky breath, right? She's a little dog with little teeth, and dental cleanings are pretty goddamn expensive, especially where I live. And yeah, I want to take accountability, like that's on me for not having the money to do it. I could lead myself to feel really guilty for that. I choose not to because I'm doing the best I can, which is all I can do. And there's a certain limit beyond like, I say I would do anything for my dog. And to an extent I would. I love them. They are my children. But dogs do sort of have a finite timeline, a finite amount of time that they live, as we all do. But anyways, I feel like I'm creating these weird justifications for why I am explaining to you why I don't put myself into debt or put medical stuff, on a credit card or whatever. I don't even do that for myself. I don't pay for health insurance. I don't take myself into the ER unless I'm like fucked. It's kind of the same thing with Judah. So I was just doing my best to like brush her teeth as regularly as I possibly can. But over the years, it's gotten like stinky, then stanky, then rotten. And the rotten is now not just rotten, it's like infected rotten. And I feel really bad for her. Like I said, I feel really guilty as well. But I'm just saying that I've done the best that I can for her. So there's this place around here, God love them, the Mercy Veterinary Coalition, who recently did some dental extractions on Gus. And that's another thing. Let's not forget, I have another dog who I spend lots of money on, not just for food and care and treatment, but like medical stuff as well. This guy's always got something going on with him in the same way that Judah does. They're both medical baskets of nonsense. Maybe that's the episode. Basket of nonsense. So Gus recently needed a dental extraction because he had a cracked tooth that led to an infection, and then he needed to get that taken out. Where many vets around here will charge like whatever, out the ass, they charged me just $500 to get Gus's done. Judah needs a couple teeth pulled. My vet and other vets around me that I was getting quotes from were going to charge me about $3,000, $2,500 to $3,000. Mercy Veterinary Coalition is going to charge me at a minimum $750. I'm expecting to pay about $1,250 just because they have this provision in there saying like, hey, these are the teeth we expect we're going to need to take out. If we need to take out any more, it'll be X amount of an upcharge or whatever. But once they're in, the hardest part, the thing that you're paying for mostly is the anesthesia, the boarding, it's a non-profit. That's why they're able to charge so much less. So, it's a different atmosphere. It's not as comfy cozy as when you go into a luxurious vet, but you don't really often get to see the back of the vet. What I'm being told is that this building kind of looks like the back of any normal vet, but I never get to see the back of the vet. And if every vet looks like this, it's a bit like, let's just go with sad. There's a bunch of kennels everywhere. So pretty much every dog or animal being boarded sees all the other animals like getting surgery done on them. And so when I went and picked up Gus, he was just like in a kennel, just crying his eyes out. Mostly because, there's lots of anesthesia in his body, but also, this boy grew up in trauma, then was dumped into a shelter and spent a long time there. And so I don't know, I would like to believe, I wouldn't like to believe, but I have to imagine that although it was a long time ago, that probably triggered some memories in him about being abandoned and being in a kennel. And, to have your dad drop you off somewhere and then you're surrounded by a bunch of other crying animals and then you get poked with a needle and then you wake up, a bunch of your teeth are missing, you're in a kennel suspended above the air, stacked in the air, and your dad's not there for a few hours. Like, that's horrifying. But they seem to have loved him and loved on him, and they seem very kind. I think that they're veterinary students, and that's why they're able to do this, not at a loss, but cheaper than they normally would. Anyway, so Judah's got her surgery coming up. When you're listening to this, if you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, it will be tomorrow. I believe that it is Tuesday that they're doing this, which actually, I'm going to do this. Hey, Siri, set an alarm for 2:45 p.m. to email the vet.
Your email the vet alarm is set for 2:45 p.m.
I don't know if you heard that, but she just confirmed. Thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on the last minute stuff that I would need. But there's like this weird 1-2 punch in recognizing that my dog, who I have had since she was a baby, 8 weeks or so, not only is she getting older, but she's getting old, and she has cancer that's spreading. And the last time I tried to do surgery, they said that she had a heart murmur, and so they refused to do the surgery. There's like a bunch of different scenarios in my mind right now that I'm like really stressing about on Tuesday. One is that I get in there and before they put her under, they detect a heart murmur and they go, sorry, we can't do this. But she has a fucking infection in her mouth that could lead to her brain, which oftentimes if this infection gets bad, if she's not on antibiotics, which is only a short-term solution, her like snout swells and that could go to her brain. So if they can't do it, I literally don't know what to do. Because she needs these dental extractions done. She needs them out. 2 is, best case scenario, but still a sad scenario, is that she goes in, she has the surgery, she gets her teeth out, she has virtually 0 teeth left, and now I'm in the home stretch. And then I pretty much recognize or concede that the next, big medical trauma that she has may be the last. And I mentioned in a previous episode when I was talking about her surgery before that, that'll be my decision. And it's really hard for me to to determine when it's time. Like, I have to read her body language, and she's already on pain meds for like an arthritis that she has. Like sometimes it's like impossible for her to walk around. The pain meds are also like helping with the tooth right now, but that's a regular expense. I don't know what cancer treatment, cancer medication, cancer therapy is for dogs. I can't imagine it's not expensive, because it's expensive for humans. And veterinary care is always outlandishly expensive. So I'm just, that's that option, is that, the best case scenario, she gets it done, she comes out okay, but then we're in the home stretch, and who knows how long the home stretch is. I recognize and concede that this is borrowed time. But that's best case scenario. But then there's the worst case scenario, which is like the saddest and hardest to face. But it's definitely a possibility, is that I take her in for a dental extraction. They don't clock a heart murmur going into it, but because of how long she's going to need to be under for all these extractions, her advanced age, her cancer, and potentially like still some lingering heart issues that they didn't register going into it, is that she dies in surgery. Which means in this moment, when I look down at my dog who's sleeping right next to me, sweet as can be, still the puppy in my eyes, I have 3 full days left with her, and I'm going to be gone for most of them. And I just don't know. I don't know what to do with that. And like, yes, of course, death is a guarantee, and that one day, and I'm sorry to do this to the pet owners who are listening, but like, that one day, even though you don't think about this, you think about when you get the pet, you think about all the good memories you're going to have with them. But nobody really, unless you've already experienced it, nobody really prepares you for like how quickly it could all be over. Nobody prepares you for the death of a pet. And already I can concede that, like, if we get to that end stage where, she makes it through the surgery, and then I just, then I'm with her until the end of her days, where I then have to be the one to put her down because of old age or spreading cancer or whatever, that would be like it would be the most difficult day of my life, putting her down, especially because I'm going to be with her when that happens, and we're going to be at my home. I'm not going to take her into the vet to put her down. She's terrified of the vet. I don't want her to be scared in her last moments. I want her to be home. I'm going to request a female nurse because she's scared of men. She loves women. So I'm going to request somebody come in who is a woman who can make Judah feel cozy in her own home. And then I'll be with her as she takes her last breaths when she gets put down. That would be the most painful thing I ever have to deal with, hands down. But if her last day on Earth is her dad dropping her off at a facility where she's terrified, where she's scared and alone, and she has to be boarded for a few hours before her surgery, and she looks out the kennel and thinks she's been abandoned, and then she dies in surgery where I'm not even there. I don't know how I could ever, I don't know how I could live with myself. Again, going back to the theme that, like, I'm doing the best that I can for her, and the best I can do is taking her in for this surgery. Just the idea of her being scared and alone, and for her last thoughts to be like, where is my dad? I don't know how I could live with myself. To kind of go back to old conversations that I've had with you, the listener, my dogs have literally saved my life. I have hundreds of examples, but the primary one is when I lived in New York and I was more inconsolably depressed than I've ever been. I'm still chronically depressed, and it's something I need to deal with and address and get under control. But when I was in New York, I was alone, and I was scared, and I was sad, and I was maybe regretting my decision. I had just, like, to be out there. I had just been divorced, and I left my dogs in my room, and I went up to the roof of my apartment, and I was just, like, looking out at the busy, like, New York street, and in between my building and the building next to me was an alleyway, which isn't extremely easy to access. Like, it's not just, like, accessible from the street. I think you have to, like, go. It's like there's, like, a little square, so it was blocked off between the two buildings, and the only way you could get into that little alleyway was to go. Had to have been, like, through, like, some maintenance. Whoops! I just kicked the microphone. Through some maintenance exit or entrance out of one of the buildings. I don't know what the purpose of the alleyway was. I don't know why it existed. But all that was down there was just, like, random smatterings of garbage. And I was up there for hours, just bawling my eyes out. And nobody could hear me, at least I think, unless they had their window open. I'm sure people could hear me, but it's New York. What are you going to do, right? And so I decided in that moment, like, this is where I'm going to jump off of my roof here. And so at first I was looking over the edge, crying, my tears falling down onto the ground below me. And then I, like, perched myself up and I sat on the ledge with, like, my feet dangling. And then I stood up. And, you know, I'm crying hard, but I'm trying to, like, push them away, like, my tears away to, like, convince myself to be brave and to jump. And the last thing I thought about before obviously I didn't jump, but before I was about to jump was like, yeah, but what about the dogs? And they weren't really, like, you know, it was hard having the dogs out there. Like, the reason I came back is because my dogs, it was too much to handle being out there. You know, it takes a while to travel. Like, everything's close by in New York. It takes a little while to travel. If I wanted to go visit friends, it was like an hour there and an hour back. And if I have my 8-hour day at work, which sometimes ended up being like a 9 or 10-hour day at work, an hour there and an hour back without a dog sitter or out a dog walker, like these dogs were going, double digits hours without peeing or seeing anybody or being walked, or being touched and loved. And it had to be such a miserable existence for them. And I went out there with good intentions of like, I'm gonna make it, right? I'm gonna be an actor, or I'm gonna do something with my life. But it was also selfish to bring the dogs out there, knowing full well that or not knowing, but like totally underestimating how difficult it was going to be to manage them. But as I'm like standing on the edge of that roof, I just thought about Gus's story, and how much time he spent in a shelter, scared and alone and sad. And that was in quaint, quiet northern Michigan. The New York animal shelter has to be horrific. And maybe there would have been some way for my family to come get my dogs and whatever, but and they would have if that was an option. But before I jumped, I just thought about Gus being back in a kennel, thinking of course, here we go again. Judah being scared for the first time really ever being in a kennel. Them wondering the whole time where I am and how long that memory lasts. And so I didn't even really go back down to be like, oh, I love my dogs so much and I need to hold them. It was initially it's going to be so logistically difficult to figure out what to do with these dogs that eventually they're just going to end up in a shelter, which means they might ultimately end up being killed if it's a kill shelter, which means me killing myself is me killing my dogs. And there was guilt associated with being out there to begin with. I felt bad that I was doing this to my dogs, as well as everything else I felt bad about and guilty about. But I think clocking in that moment that my death might kill my dogs, that guilt was worse than the guilt I had already felt. So I went from standing to sitting back down and thinking about it, and not thinking what, I do want to be alive. Because to be honest with you, sometimes it's still difficult to accept that I want to live. Recognizing that my life is much better than, my dogs are so much happier, they're so much more well cared for, I have a much better life here than I ever have, and I'm doing amazing, incredible things that I never thought would be possible. But that's depression, right? I can't fully explain it. It just is what it is. Me killing myself might have killed my dogs. And so for them, I got off the roof and I went back down and whatever, maybe snuggled them and went to sleep or something like that. I don't know. At that point, it's just kind of all a blur. But on my good days, I recognize that they saved me. No question, they saved me. Even if the truth is that I saved myself so that I could save them, right? All that to say, I worry about my mental state if the worst case scenario comes true. if I think for whatever reason in a moment that by dropping my dog off to make her life better, by getting her teeth cleaned and getting a bunch of dental extractions, if she dies in surgery, scared, if her last thoughts are, where did my dad go? Why did he leave me here? And I know dogs aren't humans and they don't think that intelligently. But I have to believe that they do, to some capacity. You've seen a scared dog, you've seen a sad dog, you've seen a happy dog. I gotta believe there's some thought in there. And if her thought is, where did he go and why did he leave me? And then she dies, it'll be that same guilt that I felt before I almost jumped. It's like my dog, the guilt I would feel, even in the afterlife, if there is such a thing, of like, I sentenced my dog to death by doing something I thought was the best thing for her. I am worried for my mental health if that happens. So obviously, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, right? Like, it's not the most likely scenario, but it's a non-zero chance that it happens. And by the time this episode comes out, like by the time that you're listening to this, the surgery, unless you're listening on day one, the surgery may have already happened. She may be out. She may be fine. But if she's not, and I know it's maybe not helpful even mentally just to talk about that kind of if, but if she's not, I'm fucked. Yeah, I'm fucked. And of course, like, I'm not just going to suddenly kill myself, because I still have Gus. And I still have plenty of people in my life who care about me, who love me, who want me around. But like, I am alive right now because of them. And I've kind of only continued to live for so long because of them. And I just think it's important to recognize out loud that, like, I don't know what I'm going to do when they're gone. And I definitely don't know what I'm going to do if that's how she goes. So, how do we get out of this one, huh? Oh, shit. I don't really know how to dismount here. Because again, for the next 3 days, I'm fucking swamped. I have what is going to be a fun, great show today. I'm really excited for this show. Been excited for this show. And I'm so appreciative to friend of the show, George Despotis, at the Big Bad George on social media, for doing the flyer for this show. He's an incredibly talented artist that I'm very appreciative of for doing such a good job on what I asked him. I kind of gave him a loose idea of what we wanted, and he more than delivered on it. And I'm excited to have more collaborations with him in the future when it comes to show flyers. So that's tonight. I'm shooting a wedding tomorrow. I'm shooting my nephew's first birthday photos on Sunday. Monday, I guess I'm just going to hang out with Judah for as long as I can, and then I host trivia late at night. And then Tuesday is her surgery. So Again, if you're listening to this on a day that isn't the release day, the surgery is either today or it has already happened. So you'll probably know soon or already how she did, how it went. And then on the next episode, we'll either talk about it. We'll either talk about it or it's going to be a while till there's another episode because I don't know how I will talk about it if it does not go well. Shit, man. It's not going to be a clean dismount, but I guess the final thing I'll say is check out Midwest Skies on social media. Go to MidwestSkiesRock.com to order merch. We've got new merch out. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, even if you don't listen to or watch the podcast on YouTube. The Let's Plays are coming out now every Thursday, and that's been a lot of fun. Go to Cat and Crew. It's KATANDCREW.com and enter the promo code Monday. That's MUNDAY for 10% off your first purchase. Probably did not air a Cat and Crew ad today, just because it's a really bummer of an episode to place an ad for in the middle of. But they're great people. They do great work, and they've just announced something I didn't announce on the last episode that I was trying not to announce, or trying to censor myself from announcing, is that they have their first music festival, Crew Fest, coming up that Midwest Skies has been asked to be a part of. I'm really excited for that. Yeah. So, shit, guys, leave a comment or something. I don't know. Rate the podcast 5 stars. Be sure to follow the podcast, not only on social media, but on Spotify as well. Leaving comments on the Spotify video or audio helps, or not even just the Spotify, but the audio version of the podcast, the non-YouTube portion of the podcast or version of the podcast. Leaving a comment there helps the algorithm. I gotta just get out of here. I have to go rehearse for this show in a half hour. Gotta let all the dogs out. Gotta decompress a little bit emotionally. Thank you very much for tuning into the A.D.H. Deep Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund, and I will see you next time.